Welcome back to the channel. It's a good thing I didn't record this yesterday because we got two massive updates on the Monday. Inter Milan were knocked out by Fluminense and Al Hilal beat Manchester City in extra time. So we have a few surprise entries into the quarterfinals. I think a lot of us would have expected Paris Saint-Germain and Bayern Munich to go through. Palmeiras Botafogo was almost 50-50 in my opinion, but they have had the better season so far. And Chelsea Benfica was another so-called 50-50 tie. A lot of people seem to favour Benfica, but Chelsea are still quite strong in these cup competitions at times. So those are the 6 confirmed quarterfinalists up until this point. But we do have Borussia Dortmund against Monterrey and Real Madrid facing Juventus for the final set of matches in the round of 16. And the winners of those games will reach the quarterfinals. And it's also important to bear in mind the bracket, especially if you are wildcarding, and that will also inform your choices for the semi-finals in Matchday 6, as well as the Club World Cup final as well. So the winner of Chelsea versus Palmeiras will face the winner of Al Hilal versus Fluminense, and that would be the semi-final there for Matchday 6. And on the other side of the bracket, Paris Saint-Germain versus Bayern Munich is the best game of the tournament so far, on paper at least, in terms of pure quality. And then the winner of Borussia Dortmund versus Monterrey, and then Real Madrid against Juventus. Those two teams will face off, and then the winners of those matches will meet in the semi-finals against either Bayern Munich or Paris Saint-Germain. So hopefully you've got a clear idea of how the structure works of the bracket and the knockout stages. And we have one major injury update. Kylian Mbappé will likely start against Juventus in Matchday 4, and I think it's a great option on paper for the quarterfinals if he makes it to that stage. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and also the notification bell so you never miss a single upload live stream for Club World Cup Fantasy, FPL, and the Champions League. And check all the links in the description for my Patreon and the Championships, for likes to my videos, amongst many other perks. The Discord server, Club World Cup Fantasy League, and Spotify can also be found in the description. But without further ado, let's jump straight into the best team specifically for Matchday 5. There was a $5 million increase to our budget in Matchday 4 once the knockout stages began, and that's something I discussed in a lot of my videos and podcasts, including my how to play guide, and the same goes to my chip strategy video. Be sure to check out those pieces of content because they remain relevant up until this point. And if you want the updated chip strategy for those that have every chip remaining, or maybe 2 or 3 left to play in Matchday 5, 6, and 7, then be sure to check out my first and latest drafts for Matchday 4, where I discuss the best chip strategy once we found out what the mystery chip is. And yes, it is the qualification booster. I used it in Matchday 4, and I'll discuss the good things about it and also some things that could have gone much better in my case, but that will be in the team selection video. There's also a plan to do a wildcard podcast, and that will delve into some great picks, not just for Matchday 5, but also for Matchday 6 and 7. This team will be specifically designed for Matchday 5, and it all depends on the teams you're favouring, and there are quality assets from every single quarterfinalist, so there are multiple different ways to approach this. But I'll start off with the 2 goalkeepers, and let's see if we can fully maximise this 105 million budget. There is a debate that Bono has been the best goalkeeper in the Club World Cup so far. He made 10 saves against Man City in that 4-3 thriller, and he was only pipped to player of the match or superior man of the match, whatever the hell it's called in this tournament, by his teammate Leandro up front, who scored a brace as well. But I think Al Hilal have decent options in every single position, and between the sticks you have so much competition. Weverton from Palmeiras, if you're backing them to keep a clean sheet, will go far in this tournament. There's also Fabio from Fluminense, the likes of Donnarumma and Neuer, 2 of the best goalkeepers in world football, but they are facing each other, and I think Thibaut Courtois could be a great solid long-term pick. But in this team, I'm not just going for Bono, but also Robert Sanchez, which is something that I'm a bit conflicted about. But in terms of Matchday 5, I think Chelsea will be right up there in terms of the clean sheet odds. But Palmeiras are a decent side and they can cause Chelsea problems. So if you are favouring them instead, then go for Weverton instead of Robert Sanchez or Fabio. I think there are plenty of decent options. Just bear in mind, you don't want to pick 2 goalkeepers from the same game. So if you go for Fabio, I would not recommend Bono because they do play each other in the quarterfinals. But as long as you've got that in mind, I think you're pretty well set for most of this tournament. And ideally, you'd have one goalkeeper from one side of the bracket, and then the other goalkeeper would be on the other side. So the only time they would face would be in the Club World Cup final in Matchday 7 where you can't make substitutions or change the captaincy anyway, and it's all about your starting 11, and we do get 6 free transfers for Matchday 7 regardless. We also get 5 free transfers for the semi-finals in Matchday 6, and for the upcoming deadline, we do get up to 4 free transfers. All of this is covered in my How to Play guide as well, and you're definitely not restricted to these 2 goalkeepers alone because, like I said, Fabio, Weatherton and Donnarumma would be right up there as some of the best goalkeepers in the game. I think Courtois is a decent shout too, but in terms of ranking these goalkeepers overall, specifically for Matchday 5, I think Bono and Robert Sanchez are the very best. Amongst defenders, I don't think anyone pips Hakimi, especially with the likes of Dumfries, who is eliminated from the tournament, kind of underwhelming in this campaign, but I think you got Nuno Mendes, Bacho, Marquinhos, they're all great picks in their own right, but Hakimi just has that attacking threat. He showed it in Matchday 3, he scored against Seattle Sounders, and also in the round of 16 against Inter Miami, another little waddle. He loves doing that sort of thing, but he's got that, the assist threat from open play, and he can get the clean sheets as well. And sometimes when PSG have a game wrapped up quite early, especially in this competition, he can be subbed off around 60-70 minutes, but never before. I don't want to jinx it, but that's what we've been seeing recently, and that does help just in case PSG concede late on. It might be a consolation goal, for example, but even up against Bayern Munich, I would favour Hakimi as one of the very best defenders in the game, not just for Matchday 5, but also for the rest of this tournament. So no matter what you do, I know he's very template and a bit boring, and in fact, he's the highest owned player in the game, but Hakimi is the best defender overall, and I also think he's a great captaincy option, as we've seen in the last 2 match days. But next up, I'm going to go for a Fluminense defender, and you've got plenty of options from their ranks actually. Samuel Xavier offers a bit of attacking potential at right back, but you've also got Freitas, who has the most points amongst any defender in the game right now, and he has scored in this tournament all the way back in Matchday 2. And Fluminense conceded 2 goals in that particular occasion against Ulsan HD, but they have kept clean sheets against Inter Milan in the round of 16 and in their other 2 group stage games. That includes a match against Borussia Dortmund. So defensively, they are very solid. And if you are quite bullish on Fluminense, you could go for Fabio in goal and Freitas or Samuel Xavier, maybe even a triple up. So I'd always encourage you to go a little bit different when possible, because as we get deep into the competition, we have fewer teams to choose from, and that means fewer players to also pick from, and that sort of pool becomes more limited, and it also becomes increasingly more challenging to be different from the rest of the pack. And that means going up your mini league standings or rising up the ranks can become a bit of a challenge from the quarterfinals and beyond, but it's still possible with those sort of double or triple ups. I think Samuel Xavier, who does qualify for the scouting bonus, and yes, he's not Professor Charles Xavier, maybe we should just call him Samuel Javier. I think the Spaniards and the Latin Americans will prefer that a little bit more. Now, Freitas does have that sort of over 5% ownership, so he doesn't qualify for the scouting bonus, but Samuel Xavier or Javier does. So if you want to be very mindful about that and pick more differentials, then that's something else you could definitely entertain. But why not go for both of them? I think that could be a very viable strategy as well. But I've balanced things in my defensive line, so you might have a double up when you include the goalkeeper, but not 2 defenders from the same team, and that could also be quite useful in terms of substitutions. But next up is Piquerez from Palmeiras, and he was a great option for those that captain him in the opening game of the knockout stages. And it's also worth mentioning that the qualification booster, it's not actually counting in terms of captaining a player like Piquerez or Hakimi who have gone through to the next round, but that qualification bonus of 2 points isn't being added to the captaincy score. So be very mindful about that. I'm not even sure why that is, but at least we're getting the scouting and the qualification bonus points actually being added. And one good thing about this game is that the ranks do update immediately after you make a substitution, change the captaincy, or simply when a game finishes. But the next defender will be Levi Colwill, and it does form the first defensive double-up with Robert Sanchez in mind, and that's really with Matchday 5 being prioritised. But Levi Colwill has 10 points in this tournament, and 9 of them came in Matchday 1 against Los Angeles FC. But really the basis of this pick is backing that Chelsea clean sheet, and if he does so and he remains at less than 5% ownership, he will qualify for the scouting bonus and give you another 9-pointer. And if you are using the qualification booster in Matchday 5 and Chelsea go through, then you could be looking at 11 points overall just by the clean sheet alone. But I think that's also a little bit unlikely for a player like Colwill, and the likes of Cucurella offer far more attacking potential, but his ownership is also significantly higher. So I don't think Cole is the best of picks in isolation, but if you are backing that Chelsea clean sheet or for them to go far in this tournament, this could also pay off dividends, at least in match day 5. And I do think he's a decent pick overall, but nothing spectacular, and the goal for it isn't really there. He also picks up a lot of yellow cards, so this could be another area where instead of Levi Colwill, you go for Samuel Javier instead and double up on a different team entirely, maybe even Al Hilal if you're backing them to beat Fluminense in the process. But the final defender is from Real Madrid, and he's had a great tournament so far, and he got me a few points in the group stages too, and that's going to be Fran Garcia, who doesn't have that sort of differential scouting bonus potential now, but his ownership is still quite low overall, and I think he's the best Real Madrid defender in terms of pure value right now, and he definitely offers that security, and it also allows you to spend more money in the midfield and forward line, so he might be worth saving the extra million or two over Trent Alexander-Arnold, Dean Howson, and all the others. It's not a big difference in price between him and Howson, but it's still, notable enough, I think, to go for Fran Garcia instead, and he's also getting some assists in the Club World Cup. So I do like this defensive structure. It's completely different to what I envisaged only a couple of days ago. I thought the likes of Aït-Nouri or a Man City defender would feature. The same goes for Dumfries or some Inter Milan assets like Jan Sommer, but that is completely out of the question now. We have some surprising quarterfinalists here, and I think they've got some great Club World Cup fantasy options, especially in the goalkeeper position and the defensive line. In terms of official goals and assists, Desiree Doué has none so far in this tournament, but in match day 4, he put in the cross that led to the own goal by Inter Miami, so he produced 8 points in match day 4 and also 5 in match day 3 because he got a clean sheet point and also a tackle point, believe it or not. So he definitely has a lot of different attributes, and I think Doué's playing really well actually, beyond the goals and the assists, and I think those contributions will come if he continues to start in this Paris Saint-Germain side, and he is first choice. With Ousmane Dembélé now back in the picture, there could be a time where PSG decide to go for Barcola, Kvaratskhelia and Dembélé with Doué on the bench, but I think Doué is definitely first choice over Barcola, and if Dembélé comes back in, it will likely be as that false 9 which we saw in UCL Fantasy and the Champions League, Kvaratskhelia on the left and Doué on the right. And against Bayern Munich, I think he will start, but if you want to save some millions in the process, you could go for Vitinha, who has that assist potential. We saw it in the opening goal against Inter Miami, and he's also got the penalty duties, which really helps him. Fabian Ruiz can always pop up with a goal, which he also did in matchday 4, but I think Doué has the most attacking potential or goal-scoring threat from any of these midfielders. We might not have seen it in this tournament so far, but I think Doué has so much potential, and he's a great pick overall, and he's only going to get better as he gets deeper into this competition. And I've also gone for Kvaratskhelia. They are facing Bayern Munich, and you might be favouring the Bavarians to win this one, but I think PSG have the better team, and if I wanted to kind of stack on one of those teams, it would be Paris Saint-Germain. But that's not to say you have to completely ditch Bayern Munich, because you've got Elise in the midfield, who was a big disappointment against Flamengo. He considered a penalty as well, so only 3 points with the qualification bonus also added, but I think Harry Kane up front is another great pick. You've got some defenders to choose from, or Neuer, but I'd completely avoid them, to be honest, because I think PSG will score a goal or two at the very least, and that's why Doué and Kvaratskhelia make it into this best team for matchday 5, but you can actually cover PSG in many different ways, with Pacho, Marquinhos and Nuno Mendes in the defensive line, Donnarumma in goal, Vitinha. Also, you can go for Fabian Ruiz in the midfield, and even Gonzalo Ramos up front, but that's probably something I wouldn't recommend too much. I think he's not going to get the minutes necessary to make him a viable pick, and Ousmane Dembélé should be back in the fold and ready to start in matchday 5, so if you have the funds, you could make that work as well by downgrading somebody else in this team, because I think after all is said and done, there will be roughly 0.3 million left in the bank, and this team will cost 104.7 million overall. But the next midfielder is going to be another premium, because we have a lot of money at our disposal, and that will be Jude Bellingham, and I think he will go through against Juventus here tonight and then face Borussia Dortmund. That's my prediction anyway, and we have seen so many upsets happen recently that who's to say that it's going to be Monterrey against Juventus? Who actually knows? But I think Jude Bellingham will be a great pick here if Real Madrid go through, and he has shown a bit of form in match days 2 and 3 in the process, so we'll see how Los Blancos get on tonight against a decent side in Juve. But I'm also going to go for yet another premium. Yes, you've heard it, and it's going to be Cole Palmer, who got 2 assists against Benfica, and he was also booked, but he's got the penalty duties, and he does have that high ceiling, and against Palmeiras, I would back Chelsea to go through, and hopefully I am wrong, but they are a decent side, they're getting better under Enzo Maresca, and guess what? You've also got the likes of Enzo Fernandez and Pedro Neto in this position if you want to save 2 or 3 million in this position and then spend it on a more expensive forward, because there is a budget option in that front line, and you might just want to invest even more money in that sort of area instead and take it away from the midfield. And Pedro Neto has been brilliant in this tournament. Fair play to him. He usually doesn't score that many goals, but in the Club World Cup, he is scoring at a very prolific rate, and let's see if he can carry this on to FPL in the upcoming campaign. But the 5th and final midfielder does qualify for the scouting bonus, and he got 8 points in matchday 4, assuming you did activate that qualification booster, and that's going to be Arias. He was at the heart of everything Fluminense did against Inter Milan. He got the assist, the clean sheet point, and he created so many opportunities and also forced some amazing saves by Jan Sommer. And I think he's got that sort of high scoring potential, actually, combining a goal and an assist in the same game. But to be quite honest with you, if you look at his goal record for Fluminense, it's nothing spectacular. It's still better than Pedro Neto, for example, but I think he's more of an assister and a dribbler. That's the sort of player he is, but he's got moments of magic and he can score some crucial goals, and he's my favourite Fluminense attacker overall, even though Herman Gano has been their prolific goal scorer for the past couple of seasons. And I also think Fluminense have a lot of underrated options in the midfield, like Hercules, who scored the 2nd goal against Inter Milan. But Arias would be my top pick, and from the same game, you might want to go for an Al Hilal player instead, like Milinkovic-Savic, for example, or Salim Al-Dawsari if he is available. But I also think with Al Hilal, you've got a certain striker up front who is offering exceptional value at this moment in time, and no one expected him to even start in the first place. But this midfield is quite balanced overall. You do have a PSG midfield double up, so if you want to balance it a little bit and kind of avoid that sort of thing, maybe go for Elise over Kvaratskhelia. Vitinha over Doué is still a viable choice, and let's not forget the likes of Pedro Neto, and you've also got maybe an Al Hilal midfielder that might pique your interest too. Enzo Fernandez has been very solid in recent games for Chelsea, even in the Europa Conference League final against Real Betis. But let's now move on to the 3 forwards, and as always, let me know your thoughts down the comment section below. Gonzalo Garcia has had a great tournament so far, but Kylian Mbappé is very likely to start, according to Xabi Alonso, which I covered towards the beginning of this podcast, against Juventus. And I think for matchday 5, should Real Madrid go through, he will be arguably the best forward in the game. You have other premiums to choose from, like Vinicius Jr., who was the star in matchday 3 facing Red Bull Salzburg. Harry Kane scored a brace against Flamengo, and there were 2 brilliant finishes as well. And let's not forget, you've also got these kind of cheaper forwards. If Juventus progress, I think Yildiz is a decent shout. You've also got Leandro from Al Hilal, Herman Gano from Fluminense, so you're definitely not limited in this position. And the lap at 6 million could start yet again, even though Nicholas Jackson will be available in matchday 5. But I think Kylian Mbappé is the best of the lot. And for matchday 5 specifically, I would actually entertain going for Mbappé and Vinicius Jr. simultaneously. But in that sort of scenario, you might want to go for Elise over Jude Bellingham, because having one Bayern Munich attacker is still a recommendation I'd make facing the best team in world football right now in Paris Saint-Germain. But Harry Kane can score against absolutely anybody, and that's why he does make it into the squad at the moment. But I'll show you a few alterations in a few moments, actually, after I've completed this 15-man squad. But what more can we say about Harry Kane? No player scored more goals than him since he has joined Bayern Munich. His goal record for club and country is exceptional, and if he had stayed in the Premier League, he was kind of destined to break Alan Shearer's record. Maybe Erling Haaland will do it instead. And speaking of which, he was going to make it into this team, but Man City have been eliminated. And the final forward is someone I've never talked about before, and he has been absolutely brilliant, especially in match days 3 and 4. And that's going to be Leandro, who just scores all different types of goals. And we all expected Mitrovic to be the starting striker, but he has had some issues as well. So I think Leandro at 4 million offers amazing value, and I kind of wish I went for him instead of the likes of Igor Jesus, but I'll be completely honest, I thought Botafogo had a better chance of progressing than Al Hilal, and who would have thought that what transpired actually did. You know, a 4-3 win there for Al Hilal in extra time. Botafogo Palmeiras was always 50-50, and I think a lot of you would have favoured Palmeiras to go through. That is fair enough, but this tournament has been full of surprises, especially in the round of 16, and we could have even more in the quarterfinal stage. So maybe we'll have Bayern Munich going through and not PSG, and that could cause some problems in future match days. But keep your eyes peeled for a best wildcard video where all the information will be there and we'll know the 8 quarterfinalists, and after that we can build a very solid long-term squad for match days 5, 6 and 7. With the captaincy, it's the same as always. You captain the first player who features in your squad, and in this case it would be Freitas, or maybe you want to go for an Al Hilal player instead like Leandro or Bono. And to be honest, from those three, I think I would favour Leandro because of the high ceiling. He can score a brace in a match very easily, and why not a hat-trick? He is definitely having a great tournament so far. But in terms of some alterations you could make with this squad, it would be Harry Kane out for Vinicius Jr., for example, and then moving Bellingham to Michael Olise, and you would still have 0.2 million in the bank. That's just a few changes you could make, you know, on the cuff of it if you want to go for that sort of Real Madrid offensive double up in that forward line, which is something not many people will do on their wild cards, maybe just using free transfers or taking hits. And speaking of which, I think a lot of us non-wildcarders could be taking a -3, -6 or -9, which is slightly different to how the hit system works in FPL and UCL Fantasy. But it's now time to discuss the captaincy very briefly, because we all know the way it works. You captain the first player who features in your squad and also the starting 11. So I think it's very important to make a big point of this in most of my podcasts for those that are still new to these sort of fantasy games like the World Cup, Euros and the Champions League. This will be very similar in principle. My How to Play guide does delve into all the ins and outs very easily, so you're well prepared for every single deadline and nothing catches you off guard. But always make sure that those playing on the first day, and especially the first game, make sure they're in your starting 11. That's the most important thing you can do before the deadline. Both goalkeepers play quite early in the match day, so Bono on the 4th of July and then Robert Sanchez on the 5th. So you start the goalkeeper features first in Bono, and if he doesn't do that well, you can sub him out for Robert Sanchez here. The defensive line includes Piquerez, Colwill, Freitas and Hakimi. In the midfield, we've got Kvaratskhelia, Doué, Palmer and Arias. And up front, Harry Kane and Leandro, who is currently the captain. I think from those Al Hilal and Fluminense assets, he would be my favourite. But to be quite honest with you, I think Arias is very, very close. I think Arias or Leandro, depending on which team you back to go through, is probably the way to go. But defenders have been excellent captaincy options in Club World Cup Fantasy, probably more so than any other fantasy game we have played up until this point. And on the bench, we've got Robert Sanchez, Garcia, Bellingham and Mbappé. Should Real Madrid go through, that is still not a certainty, but I think it will be Real Madrid and Borussia Dortmund going through to the quarterfinals. And if so, I think they're definitely worth tripling up on in the case of Los Blancos. But that is the 15-man squad, and Real Madrid should play later on in the match day as well. And if that's the case, that's how you want to order your bench to with this 15-man squad. But let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Which teams would you pile up on? And would you maybe change certain things, like going for more Bayern Munich players and maybe limiting your PSG coverage instead? And if you are doubling or tripling up on a certain team defensively, which teams are you going to focus on? The same can be said for the offensive line, where I've currently got a PSG offensive double up, and the rest is actually quite spread out and balanced in the grand scheme of things. But Real Madrid is another team actually that I've doubled up on offensively with Bellingham and Mbappe, and that could easily be Vinicius Jr. as well. And why not triple up on them for match day 5 specifically? On a wild card it's slightly different, and that's where things can definitely change, and you might want to balance certain things a little bit more. You want to be mindful of future rounds too, like the semi-finals and the Club World Cup final, but don't be too bogged down about match day 7, because as I mentioned towards the beginning of this video, we have 6 free transfers for that match day specifically, not to mention 5 transfers for match day 6 and also 4 transfers for this upcoming deadline. So you definitely have a lot of flexibility there. And with match day 7, just like we saw in UCL Fantasy for that final, we have only a starting 11 to focus on, no substitutions or change the captain. So it's all about that final 11 to really conclude this tournament, and it's very easy to build a competent squad for that specific match day. And I think the biggest issues will be the quarterfinals and the semi-finals. We have reached the end of this Club World Cup Fantasy video and podcast, the best team for Matchday 5 specifically, and keep your eyes peeled for the ultimate wildcard team for Matchday 6 and 7. That will also be taken into account, but of course, Matchday 5 is the primary focus, even with a chip like the wildcard, which can be used as a long-term tool. And on screen you can see the FPL Dylan Mini League. There is a link in the description and also the code, which is also found in the top left-hand corner of your screen. And a big shout out to every single one of you who has joined, especially those near the very top of the rankings. You are doing really well up until this point in the tournament, and hopefully the Club World Cup Fantasy winner is going to be present in our mini league as well. Thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it insightful, then like this video, subscribe to the channel, and also the notification bell so you're always up to date with all my pieces of content. That includes live streams and videos for UCL Fantasy, FPL, and Club World Cup Fantasy. Follow me on X, Instagram, and Blue Sky, DylanRCM, and check all the links in the description for my Patreon and the Championships, further access to my videos, amongst many other perks. The Discord server, Club World Cup Fantasy League, and Spotify can also be found in the description. I'll see you very soon for the wildcard squad and the team selection, and the same goes for the 4th of July for the next deadline stream.